Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another brand new Mattel Jurassic World Rebirth figure, and I feel like I'm going to be saying that a lot for a little while, because again, there are just so many figures releasing for the new film, but this time we've got the Gigantic Thrashers Tyrannotitan, and this has without question got to be one of the best painted Mattel figures that we have had yet. The paint job on this is honestly gorgeous, and of course the sculpt is pretty darn cool as well, but you can see the packaging, pretty much the standard, again with the Spino over here. I think the only one I've seen differ from that was the Quetzalcoatlus, so far anyway. And then here on the back you can see a shot of the Tyrannotitan, as well as the other figure that is in this line currently, which is the EO Triceratops. So I'm going to go ahead, pop this out of the box, and we'll check it out. So here is our Tyrannotitan, and it is definitely quite nice. I can say that with confidence. Again, the paint job, though, is just so darn nice. It's definitely my favorite part of this one. I feel like it heavily reminds me of the Gigantic that they had released a ways back. It just has kind of a similar look and feel, especially with like these quills and stuff coming off of the figure. But I feel like they're a little bit more reasonable still, you know. They have their very much so artistic liberties taken with this one, but the Gigantic had quite the very interesting look, if I recall, from the older Gigantic Trackers line. But if we bring this one in for a nice closer look, you can see, starting here in the head sculpt, it looks pretty good. We've got some decent looking skin texture here in the face. We can see the nostrils, some fine detail there around the eye. There's a little variation of color here in the face with like some reds and oranges that do have a little bit of a metallic tone to it, and they actually transition to a green as you move further back into the head. I'm not a huge fan of that area because I feel like the coloration does look a little bit unrealistic, but it does still provide a pretty flashy look for the face. You can see the eyes painted with a red, given a nice black pupil. Actually, it's more of like a decal, I would think, than actual paintwork. Up here on the top of the head, you can see the skin texture for this one is very rough and rugged, like extremely large scales as you move along the majority of the head of this one. You can see a few ridges popping up there on the top of the head as well. When you move down into the lower jaw, you do have a really nice reddish tone that actually starts in the throat, leads up, and then transitions to a yellowish, sort of a green tone for the lower jaw. I think that's really cool, and again, quite flashy. We also have some nice, very large scales there for the lower jaw as well, just like we have up here on the upper part of the head. The teeth look pretty good. Again, they have a fairly sharp look. Maybe not quite as sharp as some of them we've seen lately, but they still look pretty good. They do have, again, that softer rubber material, and they still look way better than any of the older teeth we used to see on Mattel figures. We can see the tongue on the inside of the mouth is very nicely painted with a pinkish tone, also beautifully glossed, again making it shine very realistically with a nice lifelike, saliva-like look. Same deal for the inside of the mouth on the upper side. Nice texturing for the tongue. I really quite like that tone of pink that they've applied in there. As we move back along the top of the dinosaur, you can see some more ridges popping up there on the top of the head. They as well are a rubber, which is really cool because you can see how nice and sharp they actually look. We have a dark green that follows along the spinal column and those ridges that kind of stripes and leaks down here into the side of the dinosaur. Then we have a really nice lighter green for the primary body color, and then again that reddish tone as you move down into the throat area of our Tyrannotitan. You can also see some hanging skin here in the throat, as well as a few more ridges kind of leading off of that right there, which is really cool. Again, more of that dark green following along the back of the dinosaur. The skin texture looks really good, kind of rough and rugged and larger as you move to the top of the dinosaur, and then finer scales as you move down into the side with a few osteoderms popping up here and there. Obviously, you can see we have an articulated jaw, which it's the upper and lower jaw that articulate. Odds are probably part of the action feature. We also have neck articulation, but I think that will probably be part of the action feature as well, so we'll get to that point when we get there. We do have some more ridges picking up. Again, you can see the ones in the back of the neck do decrease in size and then pick back up in a big way here, moving along the spinal column of the dinosaur before decreasing again as you lead along. You can see some more larger skin texture, larger scales and stuff up there on the back, as well as more of that darker green striping and patterning down into the side of the dinosaur Dinosaur, which I love. As you lead down into the arm, you can see the muscle definition. Again, you actually have some more kind of quills hanging off of the back of the arm here. Right in this area, you can see a few scoots up there as well. As you lead down into the hands, you can see some scoots moving down the fingers. Unfortunately, we do have pronated wrists for this one, which is sad. I would expect Mattel at this point, unless it's something again that you see on the dinosaurs in the films, like if you obviously see in the movie that they do have pronated wrists, then whatever, you want to make them as screen accurate as possible. But I can't see the Tyrannotitan being in Rebirth, maybe, but I don't think so, so there's no reason that they couldn't have just given this one the correct looking wrists, but it is what it is. The hands look okay, but unfortunately we don't quite have the sharp nails like we had seen on the Utah Raptors, so obviously they're not improving that on all of their dinosaurs. This one is a bit of a harder kind of material, similar to what we usually get from Mattel, but you do have arm articulation forward and back. Again, with both of them, I don't know if that's part of the action feature as well, but they do seem to rather be kind of flopping back into place as opposed to actually articulating like usual, so we'll have to wait and see. But as you move through the body, again, the skin texture looks quite nice. We continue to have that dark green following along the back, and what's great is, as you can see, it does lead the entire way out into the tail. That is definitely not something we see often from Mattel, so that's extremely exciting. We can see the ridges again decreasing in size as they lead along. As you lead down into the thigh, you have a few more kind of I don't know if those are like quills or what, but you have some kind of interesting skin texture here in the thigh. Again, finer scales as you move along the rest of the thigh. Muscle definition very nicely displayed throughout the course of the leg and the thigh and calf. You can see the knee right there. And then as you move down into the foot, you do have some scoots moving down the toes, and then some decently sculpted nails. Again, unfortunately, no nail paint for this on either the hands or the feet, which is a bummer. You do have swivel articulation in the ankles, though, and we can also see the dew claw. And then, of course, leg articulation, which is fairly jerky, forward and back. Pretty much, again, the standard as well. And then you lead back up into the tail, and then you can see that the primary green of the body starts to kind of disappear, and the darker green overtakes the entire tail as you lead out. And then, again, it's basically just that darker green with all sorts of crazy, like, quills and ridges and stuff all here throughout the course of the tail, as well as some nice scale detail and everything throughout. But that's a very interesting look for this one. As per usual, the tail is definitely too short for what it should be, but it is a Mattel Jurassic World figure. I don't ever expect perfect proportions and, perfect accuracy or anything like that, especially when it comes to some of these dinosaurs where they really do take some artistic liberties with them, which, some people may look at as being a negative, but I usually quite enjoy that fact. I like that they make them look interesting enough. And of course, they also have to make them look different from their other dinosaurs and draw the attention of people to purchase them. So I can understand why they create them the way that they do. But you can see this one as well. Again, looks pretty much the same on this side as it did on the initial side. Of course, the biggest difference being the positioning of the legs, as the leg is trailing over here, and the tail curving kind of away from us on this side. We do have some finer scales here on the underside. And again, look at how vibrant those are. It is really, really well done when it comes to how vibrant the scales look. There's also, like, some kind of paint mishap on the underside of mine right there. But there is the Jurassic Facts app code if you would like to add this one to your collection. Now, as far as the actual action feature goes, I'm going to assume it's probably the tail. So, yep, okay, so the arms do have something to do with the action feature. As you move it, you can see the arms move as well as the jaw. And the funny thing is, I actually shared a video of a viewer of the channel that had actually acquired this a little ways back, and in the video it basically was showing off the action feature, and somehow I didn't even notice the arms moving in that. But obviously you can see we have a jaw snapping action feature. Snaps right there at the end. Can do it upwards as well. Also, you can twist the tail side to side as well to get a chomping action feature in that direction, which I just realized. So basically, you can go numerous different directions and continue to get that chomping action feature with this one, which is pretty cool. I'm going to go ahead and try to reposition this. I don't even know where to position him. I guess like that. I'm pretty sure that's how he was initially. So we can get a size on this one for a length. You know what? I should have did it the other way because the tail curves in this direction. It's going to make it a little bit easier. So from the snout to the tail, about 13.25 inches, or around 33.5, heading toward 34 centimeters, but not quite there. And the highest point is definitely the tail at just a hair under 6.25 inches, or a little bit over 15.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day Human Being next to our Tyrannotitan, and you can see again, when it comes to a Gigantic Trackers, or in this case, Gigantic Thrashers, figure, it is pretty decently sized, definitely a little bit larger than like the Wild Roars, and to show you that, we have the Rebirth Wild Roar Utah Raptor next to the Tyrannotitan. Now, the Utah Raptor here is roughly in the same size range as most of the Wild Roars, so that should give you a pretty good idea of the fact that the Tyrannotitan is a little bit bigger. And then here we have the Gigantic Trackers Yanchuanosaurus next to the Tyrannotitan, and as you can see, the Yanchuanosaurus is actually a little bit bigger, but I feel like that figure is definitely one of the largest when it comes to the Gigantic Tracker figures that we had, so it's not a surprise to me that it's a little bit bigger. We've also got the Seats Microrum here from Mattel next to the Tyrannotitan, and as you can see, first of all, Mattel really seems to love these like quills on the back of their dinosaurs, but also again, the figures are fairly close to being the same size, with the head sculpt on the Seats being just a little bit bigger than the Tyrannotitan. And then we also have a comparison with the Bistaheoversur I was speaking of earlier, again next to the Tyrannotitan, and you can kind of see just a little bit of a similarity between the two, but again, two super cool figures that you can see are extremely similar in size. And then we've also got the more recently released Gigantic Trackers Maposaurus next to the Tyrannotitan to show you yet again that they are again roughly the same size, with just a little bit of a larger head on the Maposaurus. So this brand new Mattel Jurassic World Rebirth Gigantic Thrashers Tyrannotitan is a very cool figure. Again, the head sculpt does look a little generic, I think, but I feel like that's really, besides the lack of nail paint, my only complaint for this one. I feel like the head sculpt just has like kind of like the generic Mattel look where they don't put a whole lot of thought into them at times, but at the same time it still looks fairly decent. The kind of awkward, almost metallic paint in the face is also a little bit of a downside, but at the same time does give it a little bit of a flashy look. But past that point, I feel like the figure looks excellent. The sculpt is really well done when it comes to the fine detail. It's also quite creative, quite different from a lot of the others, while also kind of looking similar, if that makes any sense. But I like the usage of like the ridges and spines and quills and stuff all throughout the course of the figure to really give it a flashy look. I also absolutely adore the paint on this. The colors on this are fantastic and does give it almost a fully painted feel, again from head to tail with variation of color. It looks amazing. I love the red-orange there in the throat. I also enjoy the patterning, again moving the entire way through. I just really wish it had painted nails, painted claws. That's really the only thing missing on this one, I would say, when it comes to the paintwork. It does feature some articulation, but not a whole lot of posability in this one, because the majority of the articulation is attached to the action feature, as the tail, the jaw, the neck, and the arms are all related to the action feature for this one. The only area that is just straight up articulation that you can basically do whatever you want with would be the legs and ankles, and that's really about it. But overall, it is still a very cool figure, and definitely one without a doubt worth picking up. Again, this is another figure that I did acquire thanks to my good buddy Jonathan, just like I had stated in my last review of the Utah Raptor. I just wanted to kind of give him a little bit of a plug for his prototype group on Facebook. I know he takes a lot of pride in that, and he puts a lot of work into creating different images and everything for that group. So if you guys are interested in seeing prototypes of Godzilla or Jurassic World, stuff like that, check out that group. Definitely join it, and you'll see all kinds of incredibly cool stuff on there. So I will include a link to that in the description, as well as a link to this figure on Walmart.com, where you can order it and add it to your collection right now. So make sure you check those links, pick this up for sure, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.